Hello everyone. Today I have a video about one of my favorite discs, and I wanted to review that disc, and not only that disc in one plastic but 10 different plastics. I don't know if any of you are like me, but you have a disc that you fall in love with, and that was for me the dynamic disc escape. Um, so this disc, along with this disc right here. So I've got a Fusion one and a Lucid one. When I first started playing disc golf, I had my starter pack, which I started to outgrow. After that, I was looking to step up again into another disc because the other one was a very unstable fairway driver. So I wanted something that would be understable but not as much. And a good buddy of mine ended up telling me that he had some escapes that I'd been interested in, and so he let me throw them. And my first throws with these two, I instantly knew that I wanted them. I was out in an open field, and I swear I threw these things at least 350 feet on my first throw, and I was like, wow, I gotta have them. And he said, which one do you want? And I said, both of them. So I went ahead and bought both of them, and then continued buying more escapes from Dynamic Discs, and I end up having now 10 different plastics. So I'm kind of start off with, yeah, let's keep them all falling over. With, this is a prime escape from Dynamic Discs, and I don't know if you can see a whole lot here in the rim, but it's been gouged out and beat up and chewed. And so this is baseline plastic, and that's the problem with these, is they get beat up. However, I was throwing this other day, and it is flippy. I was able to throw it on a pretty good hyzer flip. Surprisingly enough, it would hold that hyzer flip to flat and glide, and it wouldn't just turn over. So that was pretty interesting to me, because I hadn't thrown this disc in quite a while. In fact, I bought this disc for my son to use, and he's been beating it up. So I hadn't thrown it in a while, but I wanted to get out and throw it for the review, and it was surprising to me. So that was interesting. Then you have kind of the typical plastics from Dynamic Discs, and you've got Lucid, you've got Fusion, and you have your Biofusion. Then if you want to step up in stability, you get the Moonshine. So in my experience is exactly the order of least understable is this Biofusion, and this has been beat up. Then you've got the Fusion, which is understable. Granted, these are not new, so this one's a little bit more stable than the Biofusion. This Lucid one is a little bit more stable than the Fusion, and then this one is a little bit more stable than the Lucid. So it kind of goes in that order. And the benefit though is I really like these two. Maybe it's just because these are my first two, but the glide on these two seems to be so good, so much better than the other ones. And that's just for me personally. So I really like those two discs. If I throw this Biofusion, it'll kind of hyzer flip, turn to the right, and then come out. I can sometimes do that with a Fusion one, but a lot of times it'll hyzer flip, maybe glide a little bit to the right and come back at the end. And same thing with this one. This one is even more so of hyzer flip. And if I just really put more into it, I'll get a little bit of a turn after the hyzer flip. But more often than not, it just goes straight, flips up to flat, and rides forever, and then fades. And then you just have this one, which you can't put as much of an angle on it to hyzer flip. And for me, it just doesn't glide as far as these two ones that have been beat in nicely for me. So then we kind of got some of, well, actually, I forgot about this one. And this one was a surprise to me. I thought a Lucid Air Escape has got to be extremely flippy, and it would be out of the box flippier than the Biofusion. And I was wrong. This actually surprisingly acts like my Lucid Escape that I have, even though it's this is a 175 and this is a 158, so significantly lighter, and it flies really well. Shout out to my cousin Aaron. I threw this in the water and he actually got in there and found it for me after a little bit of searching, because he knew it was one of my favorite discs. But if I ever lost that one, I might replace it with this one until I got another Lucid one beat in, because this thing flies pretty well. So if you think Lucid Air is not for you and you think it might be too flippy, you might want to give it a shot, because it surprised me. Then we've got Fluid. This disc is so nice. So it is gummier and has a lot more give to it than the Lucid does. So if you aren't familiar with Fluid, it a lot more pliable, kind of like the gummier plastics from other manufacturers. And I really like how this feels. I really like the feel of this Fluid, and unfortunately they don't make this plastic anymore, so because of that I'm tempted to not throw it as much, because I want to still have it for a while. Then I got a Fluid Moonshine. This is a misprint, but so this one for me, these two are a little bit more overstable than the Lucid, for example. I compare a lot to a Lucid because that's my most thrown Escape that I have, and these ones will hyzer flip up, and for me they don't quite get to flat. They hyzer flip up and then they kind of just hold that angle and then they come back, and this one doesn't seem to get as much distance, and I don't know if that's a placebo effect or what from the Moonshine, just knowing that Moonshine is typically more overstable. I don't feel like this one is as glidey as the other Escapes. Then we've got another one that's kind of hard to come by, and that is the hybrid plastic, and that's a mixture of the Lucid and the Fusion, as far as I understand. And it's got I don't know if you can see a little bit of it, it's got some swirls in there. It's kind of hard to see. The camera is not going to pick it up, but very beautiful looking plastic, and it feels great. And I think because this one is newer, it's a little bit overstable, but from other people I know that have these hybrid Escapes, that they also they don't glide as much as the Lucid ones. And they kind of just go out, same thing. They hyzer flip a little bit, and they've got a little bit of a turn, but for me they didn't quite get to flat and fly. They kind of just came up and then came back out and dumped. Now the Lucid X, this one is also noticeably different. So I don't know if you can see right here, but the Lucid X has a lot more of a dome than the Lucid does. I'm not holding up, but you can hear this. Definitely has a dome and a heartbeat to it. So this thing is overstable, and it's got a pretty good dump compared to the other two. So from people that might think maybe the Lucid Escape is too flippy for them, this one has a lot more stability to it, and I'm hoping that sometime when my form improves, I'll be able to throw this one harder and get more of a flight out of it. But for now, this one is just a little bit more dumpy than the hybrid and the fluid ones. So that's kind of an overview of all the plastics of these discs. But for me, this disc is more about just throwing on a backhand. And I've recently experimented with all things with this disc. And that's why I love it so much, is that it was my main early on driver. Then I started experimenting with forehand with this thing, and this disc, the Escape, is actually a really good forehand disc, and I think it's a good tool to teach you to throw forehands correctly and throwing hyzer flip forehands instead of just relying on overstable discs, because I've gotten some pretty amazing forehand flights with this disc that have been just dead straight. There's tunnel shots where I couldn't figure out what else to do to throw straight, and for me, throwing forehand, you're looking where you're going. You can hyzer flip these things and they ride pretty straight. So I think I've emphasized that enough, but it's one of those flights that just made me laugh and smile and grin the first time I flew through a hyzer flip forehand with this disc and parked the basket with it. So that's another thing they can do. Also, you can throw rollers, backhand rollers, with these discs. So this one's a little bit flippier, and I like to throw this one on a backhand roller. And if you work it right, you can get a backhand roll out of this. But also, if you throw it up higher, you can actually get these things to turn and glide to the right and not come back. And so these things will kind of come down. I'll throw them kind of a little bit flat and high, and this thing will turn if I throw it hard, and it'll glide to the right and maybe come back to flat, but it doesn't start fading back. And that's another shot you can have with this disc. In addition to backhand rollers, I've also thrown forehand rollers with this disc. You just got to put it on quite a bit of a hyzer angle, so that way when it hits the ground, starts rolling, it doesn't just flip over completely. But you can also do forehand rollers. And there's been a couple of times where I've missed putts with my putting putter. Not a couple of times, it happens a lot. But sometimes I've had a drive with the Escape and I miss my putt with my putting putter, and I'll just pick up my Escape and throw it, and it goes right in the basket. And so I've learned that I can actually putt with the Escape. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because they're glidey. They're a little shallow, but I can putt well with them occasionally. So for me, if I was going to play it around with one disc, it might just be this disc, because there's so many different shots that you can cover with these things. So bottom line, if you guys don't have an Escape, I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite discs. It's helped me learn disc golf, and I think you enjoy it too.